It is one of the most peculiar contradictions of modern life. We have sequenced the human genome, mapped the structure of the cosmos, and sent robotic explorers to other worlds, yet we struggle still to understand the biological vessel in which we live and breathe every day. We carry devices in our pockets that can access more information than all the libraries of antiquity combined. And yet, we often ignore the silent intelligence of our own bodies. We look to the stars through satellites, but fail to notice the slow tectonic tremors beneath our feet or within ourselves. We can explain the curvature of space-time, and yet remain blind to the stress-induced curvature of our own spines. We can model the behavior of distant galaxies, but struggle to regulate our own behavior in the face of distraction, addiction, and overload. Somewhere along the timeline of technological triumph, we became astonishingly capable and astonishingly disconnected. And so we ask, if our planet were to begin changing not symbolically, but physically, energetically, in ways that may not yet be fully measurable, but are biologically felt, would we notice? Would we be prepared? We tend to think of Earth as a passive object, a rock with an atmosphere, a platform for life. But that view is outdated. Any geophysicist, any system scientist, any astrophysicist worth their salt will tell you planets are not inert. They are dynamic systems with feedback loops and fluctuations, with electromagnetic pulses and atmospheric cycles, with an inner engine of molten iron that gives rise to the shield protecting all known life from solar annihilation. And Earth is not alone in its dynamism. You too are a system, a living, vibrating system of energy conversion, entropy regulation, and constant cellular regeneration. You are not the same person you were last year, not biologically, not neurologically, not even structurally. Your skin has replaced itself. Your blood has refreshed. Your microbiome has shifted. The body is not a snapshot. It is a continuous simulation, a real-time adaptation to changing conditions. So what happens when those conditions begin to shift in ways we have not yet collectively understood? Every living system is shaped by its environment, not simply by the temperature or terrain, but by the invisible conditions that govern motion, growth, and stability, energy, magnetism, pressure, radiation. We know this from biology. We know this from physics, and we've known it for a long time. Remove the sun, and photosynthesis halts. Disrupt the Earth's magnetic field, and the shielding from cosmic radiation vanishes. Change the pH of an ocean, and coral reefs collapse. The point is this: life is never independent. It is entangled, embedded, and constantly negotiating with the conditions that surround it. And humans, though we like to pretend otherwise, are no exception. The nervous system is not isolated. It is constantly syncing with external rhythms, circadian cycles, electromagnetic waves, even the geomagnetic resonance of the Earth itself. You may not feel it directly, but your cells do, your neurons do, your sleep cycles do. In fact, astronauts in low Earth orbit, even surrounded by the most advanced life support systems imaginable, begin to experience physiological deterioration simply because they've left the Earth's electromagnetic field. You see, the body doesn't merely exist on the planet, it functions in resonance with it. And here's where the question deepens. What happens if that planetary resonance begins to shift? Let's be clear. This is not a matter of mystical language or prophetic symbolism. This is a question of physics, of systems. Every planet has its own electromagnetic signature, a natural frequency, a rhythm embedded in the very fabric of its atmospheric cavity. For Earth, that frequency is known as the Schumann Resonance, typically measured around 7.83 hertz. It is not fixed. It fluctuates, and in recent years, it has shown signs of increasing volatility. Some interpret this as spiritual transformation, but a scientist frames it differently, as systemic recalibration. In astrophysics, we never jump to mystical conclusions. We ask, what's changing? What's interacting? What does this shift imply for biological systems embedded within it? Because if the base frequency of the planet, the low-frequency electromagnetic background within which all biological life evolved, is adjusting, then logically, biological systems may need to adjust as well. Not because they believe anything, but because their operating parameters are being nudged. This is not magic. This is math. Your body is electric. Every heartbeat is a synchronized cascade of electrical depolarizations. Every thought is a storm of ions crossing neural pathways. Your muscles contract because of charged calcium channels. Your eyes receive light and convert it to electrical signals the brain can decode. And all of this occurs within the ambient field of Earth, a planet whose magnetic and electrical behavior is not static. Now, imagine that this planetary field begins to change slowly, subtly, over time, not dramatically enough to destroy life, but just enough to demand recalibration from the systems it supports. Would we notice? Possibly not with our conscious mind, but the body is a sensitive antenna. The symptoms may not present themselves as acute illnesses. They may emerge as something far less tangible: changes in mood, disruptions in sleep, fluctuations in energy, an unplaceable sense of unease. Science does not dismiss such phenomena. It investigates them, because the role of science is not to invalidate human experience, it is to explain it. Let us consider the possibility not as a dogma, but as a hypothesis, that certain forms of modern discomfort may not be failures of biology, but expressions of biological recalibration. When tectonic plates move, we call it an earthquake. When weather systems shift, we call it a front. When neural systems adapt to trauma, we call it plasticity. And when cells behave differently under changing electromagnetic influence, perhaps we shouldn't be so quick to label the result as disorder. Perhaps it is simply response. And yet, modern culture teaches us to pathologize every deviation from the norm. Fatigue must be fixed, anxiety must be medicated, restlessness must be numbed. But in systems theory, perturbation is not necessarily a problem. It is a sign that the system is being asked to adapt to something new. And the smarter question isn't, how do I make this go away? The smarter question is, what is this telling me about the environment I'm in? Because no living system exists in isolation. Every cell in your body is in dialogue with the field that surrounds it. And when the field changes, the conversation changes. In thermodynamics, a system under increasing energy input reaches a critical point, a phase transition. Water becomes steam, ice becomes liquid, molecules reconfigure, structures rearrange. It is not magic. It is a function of energy and structure. Your body is no different. When placed under sustained stress, whether physical, emotional, or environmental, it seeks equilibrium. If the input increases, the system must find a new balance or collapse. Now imagine that the Earth, not just as a place, but as an electromagnetic environment, is slowly entering a new energetic phase. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but consistently. What kind of biological adaptation would that require? Would your sleep change? Would your nutritional needs shift? Would your tolerance for synthetic inputs, artificial food, artificial noise, artificial light begin to degrade? These are not mystical questions. These are empirical ones, and they deserve scientific curiosity, because adaptation is not an abstract concept. It is the most fundamental requirement of life. The phrase, "most people are not ready," often carries an air of judgment as though readiness were a moral issue. But from a scientific standpoint, readiness is simply a matter of system configuration. It is the alignment between the internal architecture of a system and the demands of its environment. A bird's bones are hollow not because it wanted to fly, but because its ancestors were configured to adapt across generations. A seed sprouts not out of willpower, but because the surrounding conditions align with its genetic design. So what then does it mean for a human being to be ready for change? Not mentally, not spiritually, but biologically, neurologically, ecologically. Readiness in this context means that your nervous system is not locked in a perpetual stress loop, that your physiology is not overloaded with synthetic inputs that distort internal signals, that your cells are hydrated, your rhythms regulated, your attention not hijacked by the endless feedback loops of modern distraction. And that's not metaphysics, that's systems coherence. In neuroscience, Coherence refers to the synchronized firing of different regions of the brain. In cardiology, it's the rhythmic alignment between heart rate variability and respiration. In physics, coherence describes waves that amplify each other rather than canceling out. When a system is coherent, it functions efficiently. It wastes less energy. It communicates internally with clarity. And perhaps most importantly, it is resilient to external stress. This is what we should mean when we say readiness. Not perfection, not enlightenment, but the biological and psychological flexibility to adjust without collapse when the environment changes. And the environment is changing. Whether you attribute that to geomagnetic shifts, solar flares, ecological stress, or technological saturation, the reality is undeniable. The conditions under which our physiology evolved are not the same as the conditions we now live in. We are being asked to adapt to an Earth with more electromagnetic interference, more synthetic input, more speed, less stillness. The question is not whether change is coming. The question is, can your system find coherence in the midst of that change? Biology is a language. It responds not just to molecules, but to information, to signal, to pattern. When you consume food, you're not merely ingesting calories. You are introducing data biochemical signals that influence inflammation, hormone regulation, gut microbiome expression, and neural function. Highly processed foods, devoid of original structure, filled with artificial additives, deliver noise instead of signal. They disrupt rather than inform. They overload rather than nourish. They confuse the system. In contrast, whole foods grown in sunlight, structured by nature's geometry, rich in micronutrients, are data streams your biology understands. They restore coherence. And water? It's not just hydration. It is a conductor, a memory carrier. The structure of water, its molecular arrangement changes based on exposure to light, temperature, and even vibration. The quality of water you drink, the manner in which you drink it, the state of mind you're in while consuming it, all of these influence how well your cells receive the information they need. This is not spiritual advice. This is bioelectrical engineering conducted by trillions of cells every second of your life. We often speak of external environments as though they are separate from us. But every external pattern, light, temperature, magnetism, has an internal correlate. You wake up not because of your alarm clock, but because dawn shifts melatonin production. You feel energized on sunny days because ultraviolet light activates vitamin D synthesis, impacting mood and immunity. You feel calm in forests because the air is charged with negative ions that regulate serotonin receptors. These feedback loops are not accidental. They are evolutionary. And when they are disrupted, when we replace natural light with fluorescent glare, pure water with chemical cocktails, silence with algorithmic noise, the body does not fail. It reacts. And that reaction, often labeled as anxiety, fatigue, or burnout, may not be dysfunction at all. It may be signal, a physiological message. This configuration is no longer compatible with this environment. And just as ecosystems collapse when their thresholds are exceeded, so too can internal systems unless recalibration occurs. Let's zoom out. From a cosmic standpoint, Earth is not static. It spirals through space, dragged by the sun at 828 km, H, as our solar system, orbits the galactic center. Along that path, it is constantly moving through varying regions of cosmic dust, electromagnetic density, and gravitational flux. These galactic environments are not inert. They affect solar behavior. Solar behavior affects geomagnetic conditions. Geomagnetic conditions affect Earth's atmosphere and, by extension, every organism living within it. You don't have to believe in astrology to understand that planetary movement has cascading consequences. You just have to understand systems science. When Earth's magnetosphere is bombarded by solar storms, satellite systems are disrupted. Power grids spike. Auroras expand toward the equator. And yes, some people report physiological responses. Headaches, sleep disturbances, emotional volatility. Are these scientifically proven to be caused by solar activity? Not definitively. But the correlation is intriguing. And science begins with curiosity, not dismissal. It is not irrational to explore the possibility that our bodies, embedded in this dynamic solar terrestrial system, may be more sensitive to cosmic change than we've previously assumed. You are not a passive observer of the universe, you are a participant in it. The same electromagnetic forces that shape planetary weather systems also shape your synapses. The same physics that govern galactic spin also govern the angular momentum of your bones when you walk. You are not separate from this cosmos. You are a conscious extension of it. And with that consciousness comes the one feature that no known planet, star, or atom has ever demonstrated: choice. The sun does not choose its trajectory, it follows gravity. But you can decide how you live, what you consume, where you direct your attention, and how you interpret your discomfort. You can choose to resist or to recalibrate, because readiness, in the end, is not a moment, it is a habit, a daily practice of coherence. Let us take a moment to reflect on something often overlooked. Your body is not just an isolated biological mechanism. It is an interface, a living interface between the forces of the universe and the phenomenon of consciousness. Atoms that once belonged to stars now compose your cells. The iron in your blood was forged in the heart of a supernova. The calcium in your bones was birthed in cosmic furnaces long before Earth existed. You are not just from the universe, you are of it. Every sensation you experience, every emotion, every spark of memory happens in a medium shaped by the laws of thermodynamics, electromagnetism, and quantum mechanics. When your heart races in stress, it's a cascade of charged ions obeying the electrochemical rules of your physiology. When you feel clarity after a long walk in nature, that's your body tuning literally to the frequency of its native environment. This isn't poetry, it's particle physics. You are a complex feedback system in motion, and your biology is always listening to the temperature, to the photons, to the electric potential of the Earth beneath your feet. So when the planetary system begins to shift even slightly, it is not a stretch to imagine that your internal systems might respond. Not because they're broken, but because they're involved. In engineering, one of the most difficult challenges is filtering signal from noise. The world we live in today is noisy, informationally, electromagnetically, emotionally. We are bombarded by frequencies that never existed in our evolutionary history. Pulsing LED screens, digital alerts, microwave transmissions, and chronic psychological stimulation. So, if the Earth sends out a new kind of signal, a subtle energetic change in the environment, are we even capable of hearing it? Maybe that's the real crisis. Not that we aren't changing, but that we've lost the stillness required to notice it. Children instinctively run barefoot on soil. They rest when tired. They cry when overwhelmed. Their biology is an honest conversation with the environment. But adults, especially in the industrialized world, are trained to override signal, to push through fatigue, to suppress emotion, to ignore the body unless it breaks. And so the first phase of adaptation is not adding anything new. It's learning how to listen again, to feel the minor tremors of your inner ecosystem, to recognize the subtle cues that you're out of phase with your environment, to realize that not every discomfort is a malfunction, some are invitations. It may sound strange to connect solar activity to human emotion or electromagnetic shifts to anxiety, but science has always evolved by asking precisely such strange questions. The moon, after all, pulls entire oceans. Tides rise and fall in accordance with its gravitational influence. And yet we scoff at the idea that it might also affect the human body, a system composed largely of water and governed by internal rhythms. Why? Because we've grown cautious sometimes, too cautious about what science is allowed to investigate. But real science is bold. It doesn't fear new ideas. It filters them through experiment. And when patterns begin to emerge, correlations between solar flares and human physiology, between geomagnetic activity and cognitive fluctuation, we should not retreat into denial. We should lean into inquiry. Are we part of a larger electromagnetic orchestra? Is the brain not just a generator, but a receiver? Is the Earth itself, with its molten core, dynamic crust, and shifting poles a conductor in the symphony of solar-terrestrial interaction? If so, then our task is not to transcend nature, but to harmonize with it, to tune our biology not to escape Earth's changes, but to align with them. Imagine trying to install modern software on a machine built in the 1980s. It crashes, it lags, it overheats, not because the software is flawed, but because the hardware hasn't evolved. Now, take that analogy inward. Many of us are still running a survival operating system optimized for scarcity, stress, and reaction. It evolved under conditions of threat, predators, starvation, tribal warfare. In that world, constant vigilance was adaptive. But today, those threats have transformed. And yet, our internal software remains reactive, cortisol-heavy, overstimulated, addicted to urgency. Now, overlay that with the changing Earth one whose energetic environment may be shifting, whose climate systems are destabilizing, whose electromagnetic resonance is showing unusual fluctuations. If we fail to update our own system, not just emotionally, but biologically, we risk becoming incompatible with the world we are entering. And that is not a mystical warning. It is a scientific imperative. Adapt or fracture. That's not prophecy. That's physics. The first law of thermodynamics states, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form to another. Apply that to yourself. The fatigue you feel is not the end. It is a signal of misaligned energy, a form waiting to be restructured. The emotional turbulence is not weakness, it is potential undergoing friction. Every sensation, every symptom, every wave of insight or unease, all of it is energy, moving, redirecting, reconfiguring. So rather than ask, why is this happening to me? Ask, what is this asking of me? That's the kind of inquiry that keeps science alive. Not conclusions, but better questions. Because questions are open systems just like you. Let's not fall into the trap of waiting for cosmic events to save or doom us. The universe does not deal in prophecy. It deals in probability, in momentum, in interaction. And what happens next is not determined by the sky. It is determined by response. The planets do not conspire. They orbit. The sun does not punish. It radiates. The earth does not judge. It spins, it tilts, it evolves. It is not the cosmos that writes the story. It is us, through interpretation, through action, through alignment. And so the invitation is not mystical, it is practical. Not, are you ascending, but are you updating? Not, is the earth sending you a message, but are you listening to what it's always been telling you? The difference may seem subtle, but it changes everything. For most of history, we imagine Earth as background, a platform, a stage upon which the human story unfolded. Mountains stood still, oceans flowed indifferently. The stars moved overhead while we charted our destinies below. But modern science dismantles this illusion. Earth is not passive. It is active. It shifts beneath our feet, flexes with tectonic breath, sings in electromagnetic rhythm, and pulses with the gravitational tides of the moon. It is a dynamic, breathing body, not alive in the biological sense, but in the systemic sense. And we are not merely on Earth. We are within it, bathed in its frequencies, fed by its cycles, regulated by its fields. So when Earth shifts in resonance, in temperature, in electromagnetic balance, we should not be surprised when we feel it. Our nervous systems, our circadian rhythms, even our emotional stability, they are not isolated from planetary conditions. They are expressions of them. And that's not mysticism. That's systems biology. It means that adaptation is not just an opportunity, it's a requirement. You cannot inhabit a changing system and remain unchanged. There is a tendency in cosmic thinking to feel insignificant. When we speak of galaxies stretching millions of light years, of neutron stars collapsing into singularities, a background radiation left over from the Big Bang, we may ask, what does any of this have to do with me? But this question assumes that small means unimportant, and that is scientifically false. The most transformative events in the universe begin at small scales. Nuclear fusion, the process that powers stars, occurs at the subatomic level. Genetic mutations that shape the future of species arise in single strands of DNA. The flutter of a butterfly's wings may not cause a storm, but it exemplifies a principle of chaotic systems, sensitivity to initial conditions, which means you matter, not in a sentimental way, but in a mathematical one. Your choices, what you consume, how you respond, how you treat your body, how you treat others, all of it radiates through the system. You are not just a product of this universe. You are a force within it. In many spiritual circles, the idea of raising your frequency has become popularized. But let's examine that scientifically. Frequency is the rate of oscillation, how fast something vibrates, cycles, or pulses. In physics, high-frequency waves carry more energy. They are sharper, faster, more refined. In biology, coherence at higher frequencies can mean more complex processing, faster communication, increased adaptability. So when we say raise your frequency, we can strip away the mysticism and ask a more grounded question: what increases the efficiency and coherence of your biological system? The answers are measurable. Deep breathing increases heart-brain coherence. Restorative sleep reorganizes neural networks. Whole foods provide stable bioelectrical input. Clean water optimizes cellular voltage. Stillness, mental and emotional, reduces noise and enhances signal clarity. These are not spiritual practices. They are physiological upgrades, and just as a tuning fork must match the note it wishes to amplify, your body must be tuned to the environment it hopes to thrive in. If the Earth is vibrating differently, even subtly, and your system remains burdened by outdated habits, toxic inputs, and suppressed signals, you will not resonate. You will resist. And resistance in complex systems always leads to friction and sometimes to failure. We have inherited a biology shaped by survival. The human body is a miracle of adaptation to threat. The adrenal surge of fight or flight, the short-term focus of scarcity, the rapid decision-making needed to avoid extinction. But now, our threats are different. We are not being chased by predators, but by deadlines. We are not starving for food, but drowning in excess. We are not navigating forests, we are navigating algorithms. And the biology of survival, when left unchecked, begins to harm us in an age of abundance. Cortisol becomes chronic. Anxiety becomes normalized. Speed becomes addiction. But evolution does not stop. And now it is asking something new of us, not to react harder, but to respond wiser. This is not an age of extinction. It is an age of transition. The Earth is not punishing us. It is presenting a challenge. Can you synchronize with the next phase of planetary complexity? That is not a moral question. It is an evolutionary one. Let's address the idea, often ridiculed in academic circles, that the Earth might be intelligent. What do we mean by intelligence? In systems science, intelligence is not consciousness in the human sense. It is adaptive behavior. The ability of a system to regulate, respond, self-correct, and evolve. Ecosystems are intelligent. They maintain homeostasis through countless feedback loops. Forests communicate through mycelial networks. Oceans regulate climate through heat distribution and carbon cycling. Even flocks of birds exhibit swarm intelligence patterns of behavior that emerge from collective adaptation. So to say that Earth is intelligent is not to anthropomorphize it. It is to recognize it as a self-regulating, complex, adaptive system. And you are a part of that system, not separate, not superior, integrated. So the better question is not, is the Earth conscious? The better question is, what happens when the consciousness within the Earth, that is, us, becomes aware of its own role in the system? That moment when intelligence becomes self-aware is called a phase shift. And perhaps that's the convergence we're approaching now. When you hear the word alignment, you might think of something mystical, chakras, star charts, ethereal balance. But in science, alignment is very practical. In physics, it's the orientation of vectors to reduce destructive interference. In biology, it's the synchronization of systems for optimal energy flow. In engineering, it's the adjustment of components to minimize friction. So what does alignment look like in you? It's when what you think, what you feel, and what you do begin to orbit the same axis. It's when your daily behavior reflects your deeper awareness. It's when the food you eat supports your biology, the media you consume supports your cognition, and the actions you take support your community. It's when you stop resisting the truth of change and begin participating in it. And that, more than any prophecy, more than any celestial event, is what the Earth is asking. Not for belief, not for submission, but for coherence. In physics, gravity is not a force that pulls. It is the curvature of space-time itself. Objects follow the path laid out by the shape of the universe. But you, as a conscious agent, possess something gravity does not: volition. You are not bound to inertia. You can alter your trajectory. You can choose. That's what distinguishes life from matter and conscious life from reflex. So while planets align according to celestial mechanics, you have the rare power to align by intention, and that is no small privilege. In a universe that operates primarily through causality and probability, the emergence of a creature capable of self-awareness, of deliberate alignment, is nothing short of extraordinary. You are not a pawn in a cosmic game. You are a player, which raises the only question that truly matters. In this age of planetary transition, what are you aligning to? Not ideologically, not rhetorically, but energetically, biologically, and behaviorally. Because the Earth is not waiting. It is spinning, shifting, updating. And the opportunity is not to watch it unfold, but to meet it as a co-evolving participant in a grand experiment called life. This isn't a doomsday message, but it is a reality check. We are reaching thresholds in nearly every global system: ecological, economic, psychological, technological, climate volatility, biodiversity loss, mental health collapse, information overload, each a pressure point in a network strained by its own complexity. But pressure, in physics, is not merely destructive. It is formative. Stars are born in pressure. Mountains rise under tectonic stress. Diamonds form in the crucibles of time and heat. The question is not whether we will face stress. The question is whether we will collapse or crystallize. That outcome depends on how we manage our inputs, how we regulate our systems, and how we cultivate internal coherence in the midst of external flux. And it starts not with policy or revolution, but with biology, with your breath, with your nervous system, with your capacity to restore balance within, so that you may reflect it outward. Because societies don't change until individuals do. And the coherence of one person, multiplied, becomes the coherence of a people. In the Darwinian model, evolution is slow, genetic, and reactive. But in systems theory, evolution can be fast, cognitive, and participatory. We are no longer evolving solely through natural selection. We are evolving through self-selection, through conscious adaptation to emergent complexity. This is not pseudoscience. This is the future of science. A shift from viewing life as a machine to understanding it as a process. A shift from reductionism to integration, from isolation to interconnection, from survival to stewardship. Because the next leap in evolution will not be driven by sharper teeth or faster reflexes. It will be driven by greater coherence across mind, body, community, and planet. And coherence does not arise by chance, it arises by choice. There is a long-standing debate in science. Are we observers or are we part of the system? Quantum physics answered that question for us. Observation affects outcome. Measurement alters reality. And consciousness, that slippery, immaterial phenomenon, seems to have a role in shaping the very fabric of what we perceive. So you are not separate from the experiment. You are the experiment. You are the interface between star matter and story, between molecule and meaning. And if the Earth is upgrading, if the solar system is entering a new state of flux, then your response is part of the planetary equation. Your food choices affect agriculture. Your technology choices affect emissions. Your emotional state affects those around you. Your nervous system, calm or chaotic, ripples into the collective field. And that means this convergence is not just cosmic, it is personal. Preparation doesn't require panic. It requires precision. To prepare your body for a changing planet, you don't need a bunker, you need bandwidth. Hydrate with intention. Water is not just fuel. It is the medium of biological electricity. Sleep as though it is sacred, because it is the laboratory where your body repairs and reprograms. Breathe slowly, not just to calm yourself, but to tell your system it is safe to adapt. Move your body not to punish it, but to harmonize with gravity. Eat real food, not for virtue, but for signal clarity. Detach from artificial stressors that hijack your biology, be they emotional, digital, or nutritional. These aren't new age ideas. These are electrochemical facts. They are how you retune your interface so that as the planet changes frequency, you don't break, you resonate. Every now and then, the sky offers a reflection, not a message, not a prediction, but a mirror. A chance to see, in the harmony of planetary motion, the possibility of human coherence. Celestial alignments don't cause change, but they invite contemplation. They remind us that order can emerge from chaos, that precision can arise from distance, that beauty can exist without being designed for us, and that's precisely what makes it beautiful. So when you look up at the sky on the next significant convergence, whether on May 18th or any other day, don't ask what it means for your horoscope. Ask, what am I aligning with? Ask, is my inner world orbiting a stable truth or spiraling in artificial tension? Because the planets will keep spinning, the stars will keep burning, but you have the chance to pause, to reflect, to realign, not between planets, not between chakras, but between awareness, biology, and responsibility. The final alignment is when the story you tell yourself matches the behavior you embody, and both are in tune with the planet that sustains you. It is when knowledge becomes wisdom, when restlessness becomes readiness, when fear becomes freedom, not through escape, but through entrainment, the gentle falling into step with a greater rhythm. And when that happens, evolution is no longer something that happens to you. It becomes something you choose. So here, in the silence between stars, in the breath between moments, in the space between thoughts, we return to the only question that ever mattered. Now that you know where you are in the universe, what will you do with your moment in time? Not in theory, not tomorrow, but right now. With your breath, with your biology, with your way of being. Because this earth will continue to turn. The galaxies will continue to dance. But the tone of that dance, the flavor of that moment, can be changed by you, not by conquering nature, but by becoming coherent with it. That is the future science invites us to co-create. And it begins with a choice.